Inya stood barefoot outside the house she had paid for, holding her son's hand. Inside, music was playing, and guests were clapping, celebrating her husband's new bride. The woman wore Inya's wedding beads, sat on Inya's throne, and yet, Inya didn't cry. She simply said to her son, "It's time to collect what belongs to us." Then she smiled and walked away, her silence louder than any scream. Inya was a woman who worked hard and built her life with her own hands. She didn't come from a rich family, but she had a strong spirit and a growing textile business that she ran with love and skill. When she married Pakiro, she believed love was enough. She gave her all to the marriage, ready to support him through anything. But from the very beginning, his family never truly accepted her. They smiled to her face but whispered behind her back. They said she wasn't good enough because she didn't have a rich father or a big name. They treated her like she didn't belong. Even when she brought food, gifts, and respect to their home, it was never enough. They acted like she was just passing through, not a real daughter-in-law. Her mother-in-law would often say things like, "Pakiro could have done better," while pretending to joke. His sisters rolled their eyes when she spoke. His brothers avoided her completely. Every time she tried to win their hearts, they pushed her away. And the most painful part? Pakiro never defended her. He sat quietly, letting them disrespect his wife. He never stopped their gossip, never told them to respect her. He just looked the other way, pretending not to see or hear. Inya felt alone, like a stranger in her own marriage. She worked all day, helped everyone she could, and still came home to silence and cold eyes. But she never complained. She thought if she kept loving them, they would one day love her back. She didn't know her silence would only make them bolder and their hearts colder. They had already chosen the kind of wife they wanted for their son, and it wasn't her. Inya gave more than anyone ever knew. When Pakiro lost his job and things became hard, she didn't complain. She opened her savings, the money she had worked so hard to earn from her small textile business, and used it to help him. She believed in him. She believed that when one person falls, the other should lift them up. So she paid off the debts he was drowning in, one by one, even the ones he never told anyone about. She helped him stand tall again, but she didn't stop there. His family home was falling apart, old and broken. Inya used her money to build a proper house for everyone, brick by brick, room by room, without ever putting her name on it. She didn't need praise. She just wanted a happy home. When his younger siblings couldn't go to school because of fees, Inya stepped in again. She paid for their tuition, bought their books, even gave them pocket money. Sometimes she skipped her own needs to make sure they had what they needed. And still, she stayed quiet. No one knew how much she gave up. She didn't shout it from rooftops. She believed love should not need proof or receipts. She thought they would see her heart. While they mocked her business, saying she was just a tailor, it was that same business feeding them. That same business kept the lights on, but they never asked how. They just took and expected more. No one ever said thank you. No one ever hugged her or said, "You're doing well." But Inya didn't mind. She told herself that love means giving, even when no one is watching. She thought she was building a life with people who would protect her, but they only took advantage and smiled in her face. It started slowly. At first, Inya didn't even notice. Her mother-in-law began inviting a woman named Lami to the house. Lami was soft-spoken, always smiling politely, and dressed in expensive clothes. She came from a rich family in the city, and her presence was always treated like something special. Inya was told, she's just a family friend, but something didn't feel right. Every time Lami came around, the atmosphere shifted. Everyone paid attention to her. They offered her the best seat, served her the best meals, and laughed at everything she said, even when it wasn't funny. Inya started to feel like a shadow in her own home. Soon, Lami was everywhere. She joined them during family prayers, at dinner, and even during private family discussions. When there were celebrations or birthdays, Inya's name wasn't on the guest list, but Lami's was. They stopped telling Inya about family gathering. Photos would appear on social media with Lami sitting where Inya used to sit, wearing clothes similar to Inya's style, copying her mannerism, even speaking to Pakiro's siblings like their sister. It was like she was slowly replacing Inya, step by step. No one said it out loud, but it was clear. They had chosen her. Lami's eyes always found Inya's seat, the one Inya used during family meetings, the one beside Pakiro. And every time Inya wasn't home, Lami was sitting in it, smiling, watching, waiting. Inya noticed how her mother-in-law praised Lami in front of guests, calling her refined and a good influence. They never said those words about Inya, no matter how much she gave or sacrificed. It was like they had forgotten everything she had done, or maybe they just didn't care. Pakiro never explained anything. He didn't stop it. He let it happen, quietly watching as another woman was brought in to take his wife's place. And when Inya asked him about it, he shrugged and said, "She's just around sometimes, don't overthink things." But deep down, Inya knew something was wrong, very wrong. The family she had worked so hard to build, the people she had poured her soul in, they were slowly pushing her out. Not with words, but with silence, with smiles that felt sharp, and with a new woman whose eyes never left the crown Inya wore. Lami wasn't just visiting, she was waiting. And the worst part, everyone else seemed to be helping her take Inya's place. It was a hot afternoon. Inya had just come back from the market, carrying a heavy basket of food for dinner. She was tired, sweating, and thinking about what to cook for the family. But as she reached the gate of the house she helped build, something felt strange. The gate was wide open. She walked in, and her heart dropped. Her clothes were in nylon bags, scattered near the door. Her shoes, her kitchen tools, even her son's toys, all thrown together like trash. She looked up and saw Pakiro, her husband, standing in the middle of the compound. His face was cold, blank, as if he didn't know her anymore. Then he spoke, in a voice she could barely recognize. "It's not working anymore, Inya. You have to go." At first, she thought it was a joke, a bad one, but then behind him, she saw Lami, wearing one of Inya's wrappers, her head tie, her slippers. Lami stood there with a small smirk on her lips, looking proud, not sorry. She didn't even look away. Then came the final blow. Her mother-in-law walked out from inside the house. She folded her arms and said sharply, "We need someone who can elevate the family name. You've done enough. It's time for someone better." Inya's hands started shaking. Her chest felt tight. She wanted to ask why. After everything she had done, paying the debts, training the siblings, building the house, this was her reward. To be thrown out like a stranger. She looked at Pakiro. This was the man she gave everything to. He said nothing more. He didn't fight for her. He just stood there like a statue. And Lami? She didn't move. She didn't blink. She stood proudly, as if she had won something she never worked for. Her eyes said it all. "You're done here." Inya didn't scream. She didn't beg. Something inside her went quiet, like a fire that had stopped burning. Not because it was weak, but because it was becoming something stronger. She picked up her son's hand, looked at her packed bags, and without another word, she turned and walked away. She had been thrown out of a house she built with love, but they had no idea. She still held the key to everything. Inya stood there quietly, holding her son's small hand. Her heart was broken, but her face was calm. She didn't cry, shout, or ask why. She just looked at the people who had pushed her out of her own home like she was nothing. They expected her to fight, to beg, to make a scene, but she gave them none of that. She simply looked around one last time, took a deep breath, and turned away. As she walked out with her son beside her, her feet felt heavy, but her spirit was rising. She had lost the battle that day, but inside her, a new fire was starting. They thought they had won, that she had nothing left. They didn't know the truth. Inya never removed her name from anything. The house they now lived in, it was still in her name. The land it stood on, also in her name. The bank accounts, the family car, even the electricity and business registration, all still had her signature. When she helped her husband and his family, she trusted them, but she also protected herself, quietly, without noise, without pride. Nobody noticed when she kept the original documents safe. Nobody asked why she always handled the paperwork, because they never saw her as smart or strong, just the simple wife who cooked and paid bills. That was their biggest mistake. As Inya and her son walked away, her mind was calm. She was already planning what to do next. She didn't need to argue or explain. The same way they pushed her out without warning, she would collect back everything without shouting a single word. The silence they mistook for weakness, that silence would become their greatest fear. Because when a quiet woman moves, she doesn't knock. She walks in and takes what's already hers. Inya didn't say a single word. No warning, no fight, no noise. But one by one, everything started to change. At first, it was small things. The front door lock didn't work anymore. Their key couldn't open it. They thought it was a mistake. Then the car wouldn't start. They took it to a mechanic. But the problem wasn't the car, it was Inya. She had taken back what was hers, the family compound they had pushed her out of. She sold it, quietly, no one saw it coming. She walked into the office with her documents, signed the papers, and collected her money. By the time they found out, it was too late. The new owners were already on their way. The bank account suddenly froze. No money could go in or come out. Her husband and his family rushed to the bank, shouting at the staff, but the bank manager told them clearly the account owner had requested it, and that owner was Inya, the same woman they had called not good enough, the textile business they once laughed at, the one that paid for their school fees, clothes, food, was also under Inya's name, and she shut it down, just like that. Staff laid off, shop closed, no announcement, no goodbye, nothing. She also removed her name from anything that could be used to drag her back. No loans, no legal ties, no financial support. She cleaned her hands and walked away. Everything she had once given in love, she was now collecting with quiet power. People in the village started asking questions. They didn't understand how the new wife and her in-laws suddenly had nothing. No house, no car, no business. But Inya didn't speak. She didn't post on social media. She didn't tell anyone her side. She just moved in silence, calm, focused, and unstoppable, because revenge didn't need noise. It only needed truth. And Inya had all the proof. She didn't fight for her respect, and she simply collected what belonged to her and left them standing in the dark, confused and powerless. Lami had thought everything would be smooth. She believed she had won. A big house, nice cars, the title of wife. It all seemed perfect at first, but soon things started to change. The house went dark. There was no electricity. The generator stopped working. The staff were gone. No food delivery. No house help. Nothing. She asked Pakiro for money, but he had none. He ran to his mother, but she had nothing either. All the accounts were empty. The credit cards didn't work. The drivers didn't show up. The fancy lifestyle she was promised had disappeared like smoke. Lami sat in the living room, sweating, confused and scared. The same family that once clapped for her, the same mother-in-law that said, "She's the one who will raise our name," now started whispering, "Where is her help? Why can't she bring anything to the table?" They started comparing her to Inya, the woman they once insulted, the one they pushed out with pride, the one they said wasn't good enough. Pakiro was the most confused. He couldn't understand how everything vanished. The house they lived in, sold, the cars, locked, the accounts, frozen, the business, shut down. He didn't know who to blame. He remembered how Inya always handled everything, quietly but perfectly. So, one evening, he went to find her, angry, tired, embarrassed. He shouted, "What have you done? Why would you do this to us?" Inya didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult him. She just pulled out a small file. Inside were receipts, documents, and agreements, all signed by him. Transfers, property pay, bank forms, business documents, everything. She looked him in the eye and said, "You handed me the power when you were down. I used it to build this family. And now I'm taking back what I gave." Pakiro couldn't speak. The truth was clear. Everything Lami had been enjoying was built by the woman they threw away. And now, without Inya, it was all crumbling. The perfect bride sat in silence as her dream turned into dust. And Inya, she walked away again, not out of pain, but with quiet strength. She had nothing to prove. They had already proven it for her. The village couldn't believe what they were hearing. One by one, stories started spreading like fire. The same Inya they had insulted, looked down on, and mocked. She was the one who had been holding everything together. People whispered in shops, at the well, and on the streets. "Did you hear? It was Inya who built the house. She paid for his siblings' school fees. She was the real breadwinner." Every corner of the village buzzed with shock. Even those who once laughed at her humble background began to feel ashamed. The truth hurt their pride. All along, they had praised Pakiro's family for having money, for being powerful, but that wealth was Inya's doing. She had been the engine behind their comfort, the reason their compound stood tall, the silent helper they pushed aside. Lami's image, which once looked perfect, now cracked. People began to see her for who she truly was, a woman who came for a crown she didn't earn. Her parents, who had once proudly visited the village and looked down on Inya, quietly stopped showing their faces. Even they were embarrassed. They didn't know their daughter had replaced a queen and destroyed everything in the process. Meanwhile, Inya didn't say a word. She had moved to another city and was now running a large textile export company. Her business grew fast, and her name became known in big circles. She didn't look back. The same people who once ignored her now tried to call. Old friends, in-laws, even people from the village tried to reach her, but she didn't answer. She had no time for fake apologies or sweet words after bitterness. People were stunned. Some said, "She has changed," but others replied, "No, she's just showing who she always was." The woman they once saw as not good enough had become a star, and she did it without noise, without revenge, and without going back. Her silence became louder than their gossip. Her success became the answer to every insult. And the village? It learned a lesson it would never forget. Never underestimate a quiet woman with a strong heart. Months passed, and the family decided it was time to cover up their shame with a big celebration. They planned a grand wedding ceremony for Lami and Pakiro, with decorations, music, food, and invitations sent all around the village. They wanted people to forget what happened, to pretend everything was perfect again. They even tried to act like Lami had always been the right choice. But the day of the event came, and no one showed up. The chairs stayed empty. The food remained untouched. The music played, but there was no dancing. Not even the neighbors came. People looked from afar and shook their heads. The once proud family had become a laughingstock. Everyone now knew the truth, that they had thrown out the real jewel, Inya, for a shiny stone that had no value. The family name, which once carried pride, was now only mentioned in gossip and jokes. Lami sat with a fake smile, dressed in expensive clothes. But inside, her heart was sinking. Her dream wedding had become a nightmare. Pakiro looked around at the emptiness and felt a shame so deep he couldn't meet anyone's eyes. His mother, who once walked tall, sat quietly, not even able to explain where everyone had gone. The loud family had suddenly become silent, but in a different city, at the same exact time, something powerful was happening. Inya's face was on the front page of a national newspaper. The headline read, "Woman of Impact in Business." She had been recognized for her success, her strength, and her growth. People across the country were reading about the woman who had once been treated like nothing and now stood as a symbol of excellence and grace. Inya was being honored at a big event with leaders, business owners, and important guests in attendance. Cameras flashed and people clapped for her. She smiled, calm, elegant, and proud. She didn't need to say anything about her past. Her success spoke for her. The same day they tried to pretend she never existed was the day the whole nation celebrated her. And the village? It watched both scenes, the empty ceremony and the glowing news, and realized the truth. They had pushed away gold and were left with dust. Pakiro arrived at Inya's new showroom, looking tired and worn out. His eyes were sunken and his hands trembled as he stepped inside. He looked around at the busy workers, the beautiful fabrics, and the shining trophies on the walls. This place was a far cry from the house he had thrown Inya out of. Taking a deep breath, he finally spoke with a voice full of regret. "Can I see our son?" Inya looked at him quietly, her face calm but strong. She held her son's hand and said softly, "He's not a burden to carry, only when it's easy for you." Her words were gentle but firm. Pakiro's heart sank, knowing how much he had lost. Without waiting for an answer, Inya turned and walked away with grace. Her steps were steady and proud, like a queen who had risen above pain and betrayal. She didn't look back at Pakiro or the life he had chosen to leave behind. She was radiant, full of quiet power, a woman who had rebuilt herself from nothing and was now unstoppable. Pakiro stood there alone, surrounded by the success and peace that Inya had created without him. He realized that the past could not be changed, but Inya's future was shining bright, and he would never be part of it again. The ashes of their broken past lay behind her, but she moved forward, strong and unbreakable. If you believe in standing strong when life tries to break you, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, true power is quiet, but unstoppable, just like Inya. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and follow for more real stories that inspire and empower.